Fella here again for Small Business Digest. It's an interesting time. We've just recently seen that the second quarter of negative growth, and people are saying recession or whatever the president wants to call it. But the important thing is, what does small business do in a time like that? Well, one of the things that in past they've done is cut down PR and advertising. And we have with us someone who I think can help us understand why you shouldn't. KJ Helms is with us. She's got a company that I've known over the years does a disruptive job. So, KJ, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I love hearing that you like that we do disruptive jobs. We are disruptive, that's for sure.
Well, some people don't like it, other people love it. I'm just, that's how you describe yourself. So why can't I do the same for you?
Yeah, thanks.
So, KJ, tell us a little bit about your background, which I know is very interesting, and then tell us about your company, and finally, a website that people can learn more.
Okay, great. Well, I'll tell you just a little bit about myself. I think people are probably more interested in the topic that we'll talk about instead of me. But my background is in crisis management. I've worked with companies for years to put them back on the map in favorable court of public opinion when they have been the target of lawsuits, embezzlements, breaches, you name it. And in any of those times in crisis, the very first thing that we did was sequester off leadership into doing what they did best, which was promote like hell and run the company. And we handled all the bad news and turned things around. So I am very aware of what happens when the court of public opinion has opinions other than what a company needs and wants in order to succeed or expand. And I know how to turn that around. Yeah. So that's what you wanted to know about me, right? Okay, good. Website.
No, we know nothing. We learn more about your company, but I always like to find out something personal about a guest because it often lead to some interesting questions later on. That's why I always ask the question.
I see. Well, I actually was a dance major. I was a dancer growing up. I was a dance major in college. I was part of a prestigious dance team. We traveled all over the world. I was a collegiate athlete. We performed for presidents, inaugurations every year, the Macy's Day Parade, the Cotton Bowls, Rose Bowls, Cannes Film Festival, you name it. And in that particular part of my dance career, I broke my back. And things happen. It was fractured vertebrae, not as big as, I can still walk. In fact, I healed great. But it was at that time that my dad really said, well, we've got to look for another career. And he kept pushing me to go into PR. And, as a 20-year-old, I was very much of my own mindset and didn't want to do what dad said. No way in hell was I going to do what he said. So it just so happened that I went into poli-sci and, ended up studying PR. And lo and behold, one of the jobs that I took still in school, they thought I would be excellent for their PR program. And that's how I actually started studying PR. So dad was always right. And they put me, my very first, practical experiences in PR was the healthcare company that I was working for at the time had a massive lawsuit. And they were really smeared, libel and slander all through the press. They were definitely bleeding revenues. And I got a chance to work with some of the best crisis PRs and the best litigators and private investigators in our country. Only about 9% of people with these skill sets in our industry have this particular type of skill. And I really learned and honed that skill early on. I learned all about, the court of public opinion and how it's used against companies to stop their competition from getting bigger than them. So I definitely know the ins and outs of how PR has been manipulated to gain more business. And so there's a little bit about my background, how I got into that. I just kind of fell into it. And, you know, I'm a firm believer that if you've got skills and you know how to fight, and you can fight the good fight, you can help the good guy win.
Mhm. That's great. Natural question is, what does your father do? Was he in public relations?
No, he wasn't. No. Yeah, he was a CEO. He went to Georgia Tech. So he
Oh,
had a
so did I.
very, oh, you did. So you're a rambling wreck from
Yes,
Georgia Tech and a hell of an engineer, right?
yes.
Wow. Well, there you go. So you understand how engineers think, or people that are trained with that particular logic. They're very logical. Um, anyway, he wasn't an engineer, but he was a CEO in business administration. And, you know, I don't know whatever he saw in me ended up being the thing that I ended up doing.
Sounds like a very smart man.
Well, he thinks
You
so.
know, you know that old saw. At 16, I thought my father was pretty dumb. It's amazing how much he learned at 20 since when he turned 21.
Yes, yes,
But
absolutely.
I'd like to go sideways from our original talk because you brought up something which just happened to cross my desk from one of our research because small companies suffer negative publicity as much as big companies. We just never hear about it. But my first question would be, and I know my audience would like it, is what should a small company do when someone says, for instance, "Oh, they discriminated against me because I couldn't get in the front door with my wheelchair," or things like that. You know, it's the little things that cost $2,000 or $3,000 that really hurt small business more than just as much as the $1 million for big business. What do you say to someone? What are some of the things they should be doing the minute they start to see negative comments?
Well, it's a series of things that you need to do. But the very first thing you need to do is you need to sequester off the project to review those negative comments and what is happening to one person or a particular team. Now, a small business typically doesn't have a lot of people, but if the owner or the CEO or, you know, the sole practitioner, you know, or the small leadership is focused on this, they won't be focused on running the business. Um, there is a correct sequence of expansion when you're in a crisis. And if you don't follow it, that's why we talk about recessions. And if you don't follow this, you will contract and go smaller. Let's say that's a crisis, right? You really need to make sure that you focus, number one, on promoting first and foremost, right? PR, advertising, marketing, pushing out the promotion even more than you've ever done before. Why? That gets more attention units on the company, that brings in more leads, right? Positive promotion. When you sequester off someone to handle the bad news, you really have to take a look at that and say, okay, did we mess up? Is it actually true? What do we need to do to correct it internally? What do we need to do to correct it externally? The positive promotion over here will mitigate a lot of damage by giving you more volume to that negativity than that negativity is creating for your business. You should never just gloss over it. If it really was something that you messed up on, you fix it, right? But don't spend all your efforts fixing that without really focusing on promoting first and getting your business name out there, because it's been hit, right?
Mhm.
When people have a vacuum of information, nature abhors a vacuum. Here's a great engineering rule, right? This is from physics, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. So if someone filled the vacuum with negative news, right, you better make sure that you fill that vacuum with positive news on as many other people that are in your target audience before they get wind of that negative news. Whatever
Mhm.
fills that vacuum first wins, right? Then you can start mitigating what really happened. And if it is just a one-off, that it is just a disgruntled person, or if it really is something that needs to be fixed. Businesses always need to take a look at that, right? So the first rule of thumb in correct sequence of expansion when you're getting hit is promote like crazy. There's two other things, but that's the very first thing you do, and make sure that you sequester off the bad news and have somebody else handle that while you focus on running the business.
That's very interesting. I'm not heard it in that way. I have to. It's an interesting thing. Walgreens had this recent thing where the clerk would not sell a condom to this couple, but to this man, and he complained. And what he did was what he was supposed to do. He let another clerk sell it. Well, it's interesting. Our local drugstore had the same problem, and it made the local papers here. I hadn't realized it too until someone mentioned it earlier this week. But for a small business, they didn't know how to handle it. Walgreens handle it. So we'll get off the top in a minute. What should the drugstore, an independent drugstore, have done in its place? It's a local. It doesn't have a national footprint. It has a local. What should it be doing to mitigate that?
Well, small businesses can emulate and mirror what public companies do. Walgreens is going to sick their comms department on it. Their comms department, their communications team is going to make sure that they get their side of the story to the press, right?
Right.
Now, one thing companies don't know is this is 100-plus-year-old tactic that was created by Rockefeller's PR man, is that if you want to get your side of the story out to the press, issue a press release. That's what they're for. Companies in the past, back then, typically didn't do that. And so journalists really took a look at that, like, wow, a company's actually telling us what their side of the story is. And they'll typically publish it as the opposing view, right? People are, pretty wary of negative, salacious news today, right? And, a newspaper may publish a story, but you should never say no comment. Have that, I don't know exactly what happened, but, have that drugstore draft a press release and issue the statement about what happened, their side of the view, and what they'll continue to do or not do that aligns with their policies or the purpose for them being in business. I don't know what they did or if it was something they did wrong, but they can always spin something in a positive way that makes them the hero, because most people like to support the little guy, right? A little guy's getting attacked. A little guy can speak up. Anytime you speak up when you're getting attacked, you look a little less guilty.
Good thought. KJ, we never got around to it. What's your website?
Sorry. It is jotopr.com. JOTOPR.com.
What does that stand for? Very interesting one.
Joto is an ancient Japanese word that means very high class, very high quality.
Oh,
and
okay.
We apply, ancient communication. I shouldn't say they're ancient. We apply traditional communication laws based off of engineering and physics, natural laws, in highly disruptive digital media today to get people's voice heard and increase their share of voice.
Okay. Well, now let's go back to our original topic, which was a lot of companies are pulling in their horns, a lot of small companies. Your view is now is the time to advertise and to promote. Am I correct on that?
You are correct.
You want to expand on that for our audience?
Well, sure. I mean, this particular methodology is, been studied by many different organizations, right? Companies that promote heavily during recessions or threatened recessions or crises come out bigger and stronger and ahead of their competition when that period is over. You can look it up in the Harvard Business Review. It's been published in many reputable studies, like business journals. If you contract and you cut off your promotion, you cut off your communication lines, right? And you
Mhm.
start economizing. The problem with that is you cut off the flow of communication into your company when you quit communicating outward. And then you have nothing to economize on. In other words, you have no business coming in to close, and then the economy made you contract, right?
Mhm.
So the correct sequence of expansion by all these studies, and I can tell you it works, is promote first and foremost. Then, straighten up administrative lines, get administrative lines working better so you can prepare to deliver with all the leads that are coming in or the new business that's going to come in from your promotion, and then get in sensible economy. Because if you don't do it in that order, you won't have anything to economize on.
Yeah, I don't know of a single CFO who doesn't say when they say when recession hits, let's cut the promotion. I've been I've been in large corporations, and that's the first thing that goes is the promotion.
I've seen that too, but there's always two types of CFOs. There are CFOs that are penny pinchers, right? They operate on the economy rule, right? And then there are CFOs that are, I call them bean return, right? Or bean theory, bean counters. They look at how many beans can I invest in order to get so many beans back. And the CFOs that I've seen that are most successful are the ones that are looking to get a return on investment for what they're putting out there for the company. And promotion and marketing protects the assets that they have so they don't have to economize those. So I've seen two different types.
Yeah. Um, which obviously I think that I know the answer, but which do you prefer?
Well, I always prefer the latter. They seem to have a broader view on things. They definitely know how to make money rather than just save money. And those are really the best CFOs to work with.
Hmm. Well, let's go sideways for a moment. When you say you're disruptors, how do you disrupt?
That's a good question. Well, our target clientele are mostly tech startups that are backed by venture capital. They're in tech, healthcare, finance, IT, so health tech, fintech, edutech, insurtech, you name it, right? And they're in a highly competitive industry. They're creating disruptive technology that changes the status quo of what's happening out there today, right? What's happening in healthcare, making it more transparent, what's happening in finance, making it more accessible to people around the world, you name it. And anytime you're doing something disruptive, even though it's for the greater good, change causes a lot of resistance and confusion. And these companies need to get their message out and disrupt the market with their education about what are the issues, problems, controversies that are going on today that they're actually really solving, right? How does blockchain solve the honesty and transparency of not only data, but financial transactions, right? How are companies able to make healthcare pricing transparent across the country, right? How are companies helping small businesses and merchants mitigate the chargeback issue that's costing them so many fees, that's lowering their profits, right? In an e-commerce that's gone wild. These are all technologies they're very disruptive because they're changing the status quo, but they're innovative, and that messaging needs to be innovative and disruptive in the same token.
So I come up with something to disrupt um, um, an industry. I was I always used to use the example of, and now I've had a senior moment I can't remember, uh, but someone comes to you say, I've got the product that's going to disrupt how small businesses uh, take in cash. Uh, Here in New Jersey, they're talking about doing away with the requirement that you have to take cash. But it's going to mean some people are going to, and I've seen a proposal from someone to develop a way to transfer cash into electronic payment. But anyway, I have a new product. What do you say to that person? What are the two or three of the questions you ask them when they come to you and say, "We want your services"?
Well, gosh, there's many questions, but the very thing is I look at is the veracity of their business plan, right? Um, how big is their market? What's the total addressable market? Is there a pent up demand for this service, right? That hasn't been being fulfilled. And what is their goal, right? How are they going to expand? Like, what is their goal in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, right? What is the problem that they are having? Is it anonymity? Is it they don't know how to get their message out? Is it, reaching the target public and convincing them, right? Those are just a few of the questions. But, I also look at what is the problem that they're solving. This is a big issue, right?
Hmm.
Because number one rule in branding and, even in the news and even in marketing, you don't talk about your services and product. You talk about the problem
Mm.
that your prospective clients are facing. So take a look at it. Like, what does this solution solve? And is it really a, a big problem, right? And will it be a big problem? And is it going to be an even bigger problem if something doesn't happen? Um, that's really the meat and potatoes of it.
Very, very interesting. It's amazing how many things I've seen where the engineers have developed these cool products, but there's no use for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, that happens a lot. That happens a lot. Venture capitalists, they invest and they, 1 in 10, 2 in 10 of their companies they invest in, come to fruition. Um, some of them, I've seen some really good technologies, but they don't know how to tell their story. And if you don't
Mhm.
know how to tell your story, then that's a problem.
In your view, what's most important, the product or the management?
Mm, well, they really go hand in hand, right? But if you don't have a good product, if you don't have a good service, if it doesn't deliver something valuable, it doesn't matter how good a management you have. You're not going to be able to put lipstick on a pig very long.
Okay. Leon, your website again for our audience?
Sure. It's Jotopr, JOTOPR.com.
Okay. We only have a couple of minutes left. What would you like to leave our audience with?
Well, I would like to tell them this. Small Business Digest, small businesses are in a period of time where they have the ability to compete with the Goliaths. This is the time for SMBs. SMBs have access to technology. They have access to ability to service their communities with that technology and all the new technologies arising in a way that they're able to compete with the Goliaths and the big behemoths. And they should embrace that and they should go after it in a big way because this is the time to level the playing field.
That's a great thought to end this our meeting with. Thank you so much, KJ. It's been an interesting time for me. I hope it is for you and our audience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.